If everything around you feels chaotic today, remember that Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The tranquility you seek comes from within your own mind." The real question is, how do you find it in the middle of the storm? In an age where a single message can ruin our entire day, Marcus Aurelius, a man carrying the weight of a collapsing empire, remained astonishingly calm. And he did it using one simple technique. No rituals. No escape from the world. No perfect quiet. Just a shift he could make in the very moment chaos struck. Today, we open his ancient journal and uncover the technique that allowed Marcus Aurelius to stand firm in the storm, one you can start using right now. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself of a truth that seems simple, yet it is the very foundation of staying calm in chaos. Do not let your mind be pulled by what you cannot control. But he didn't just say it. He wrote it down night after night, as if having a quiet conversation with his own soul, a practice to bring his mind back to the only territory he truly ruled: his inner world. In the worn pages of his journal, Marcus wrote about wars, betrayal, exhaustion, and the silent burdens a Roman emperor was never allowed to express. And yet, in the midst of all this, he discovered one profound realization. Chaos is not out there, it begins with how we choose to respond. So each time he faced pressure, fear, or confusion, Marcus used a technique that was deceptively simple. He stepped outside himself, observing the moment as if from a distance. Not to escape it, not to deny what he felt, but to create just enough space to see clearly what belonged to the world, and what belonged to him. In that small pause, in that breath where he asked himself, "What can I control? And what is trying to control me?" he unlocked the calm that carried him through every storm of his life. Marcus Aurelius had a unique way of staying calm when everything around him threatened to fall apart. He described it in words that were simple, yet astonishingly powerful. View human life as though you are standing high above it, looking down. To Marcus, this wasn't just a poetic metaphor. It was a real technique, a mental exercise he practiced every time his mind felt heavy. 1. Stepping out of yourself. Marcus believed that most human suffering comes from being too entangled with our own emotions. When someone insults us, we instantly become the victim. When work becomes overwhelming, it feels as if the entire world is against us. When the future looks uncertain, we convince ourselves everything is falling apart. And so Marcus wrote, "Step back, see yourself as a small figure in the vast picture of the universe." He imagined himself as a tiny point of light on the map of existence. People worrying, people arguing, people chasing power, wealth, validation. And he, even as an emperor, was only one tiny part of that ever-moving landscape. And when he took that step back, he realized something profound. The things that anger us, scare us, or overwhelm us, are often very small when viewed from above. This wasn't denial. It was liberation. 2. Becoming a silent witness. Marcus' technique didn't require a peaceful environment. It didn't require clearing the mind or suppressing emotion. It only required one thing. Observe. Observe yourself being angry. Observe your stress rising. Observe your emotions coming and going like clouds drifting past. No interference. No judgment. No identifying with what you feel. Marcus called this the role of the witness, the part of you that can watch the storm without becoming the storm. Think about it. When you watch someone else being angry, does their anger automatically become yours? Of course not. You simply notice it. So why, when you are the one angry, do you let it consume you? Marcus understood something most people never realize. Emotions hold power only when we fuse our identity with them. 3. The zoom in, zoom out exercise. One of Marcus Aurelius' favorite mental practices was deceptively simple. Zoom in, look closely at the problem. Then zoom out, see it in the context of your entire life. For example, filled circle and insult, zoomed in, it hurts. But zoomed out, it's just noise from someone struggling within themselves. Filled circle work pressure, zoomed in, it suffocates. But zoomed out, it's only one moment in a journey of many years. Filled circle a mistake, zoomed in, it feels unforgivable. But zoomed out, no one will remember, not even you. Marcus used this technique to lighten the load of the mind, stripping away the layers of exaggeration that emotion often adds to life's events. 4. He asked himself, will this matter in 5 years? Marcus used one question as a shield against emotional chaos. Will this matter in 5, 10, or 50 years? And more often than not, the answer was no. A misunderstanding, a harsh comment, a ruined plan, a temporary failure, someone who dislikes you. All of it fades with time. Marcus wrote, if it will not matter in the future, do not let it control your present. 5. Distance creates calm. As Marcus created distance between himself and his emotions, he noticed something profound. Emotions are not as powerful as they appear. They only look big because we stand too close. It's like standing at the edge of the sea. The waves look huge, powerful, frightening. But when you climb a hill and look down, those same waves seem small, almost gentle. Marcus learned to stand on the hilltop of his mind. And from there, everything became lighter, slower, clearer. 6. The final realization. Marcus wrote a sentence that still echoes through time. If you control your mind, you control everything. Not because the world obeys you, but because your mind no longer bends under the weight of things outside your control. The moment you rise above the situation, the moment you become the observer, the moment you place distance between yourself and the chaos, that is the moment you become free. The technique of viewing life from above was not a philosophical idea to Marcus Aurelius. It was something he used, something he relied on, something he tested in the darkest chapters of his life. Marcus was not just a philosopher. He was an emperor. And the life of an emperor is never peaceful. 1. On the frozen battlefields. Imagine this. An aging emperor, his body weakened by illness, standing in a cold military encampment along the Danube River. Outside his tent, metal clashes against metal, soldiers scream, fire rises from the horizon. And in that moment, Marcus Aurelius opens his small notebook and writes, "Do not let what happens outside disturb your mind." He sees the brutality around him, death, fear, loss. Yet he refuses to let any of it govern his inner world. Instead, he steps outside himself, as if watching from a high mountain peak. Not because he was unfeeling, but because if he allowed emotion to rule him, he could not lead the thousands of soldiers who trusted their lives to his judgment. And in that moment he understood. Distance doesn't just bring calm. It brings clarity. 2. Amid political schemes and betrayal. Rome was filled with deceit. Even inside Marcus' own council, there were men who plotted, manipulated, whispered lies, and waited for the chance to strike. There were times when trusted advisors turned against him, when generals disobeyed orders, when those closest to him betrayed his trust. And in those suffocating moments, surrounded by half-truths and hidden agendas, Marcus wrote, "Others may act unjustly, but they cannot make me lose my peace, unless I allow it." So once more, he took a spiritual step back. Watching the politics, the lies, the masks people wore, as if he were observing a play, rather than being a character trapped inside it. And in that distance, he reminded himself, all of this will pass. What remains is how I choose to face it. 3. Confronting loss and death. The greatest pain in Marcus' life was not war, but the loss of those he loved. He lost his wife. He lost several of his children. He lost close friends who had walked with him for many years. And in the silent nights where grief cut deeper than any sword, Marcus did not run. He observed the pain within himself, as a quiet witness. He wrote a line that still breaks hearts today. Remember that everything you love is given to you on loan, not owned. From that elevated point of view, the view of someone standing above life rather than drowning in it, he accepted what most people fear to even look at: impermanence. And through acceptance, he found peace. 4. When he became overwhelmed himself, Marcus was not always strong. There were days he was exhausted, mornings when he admitted he did not want to rise from bed, moments when responsibility nearly crushed him. But even when his mind was at its heaviest, he turned to the practice he had forged through years. He stepped outside his own mind and looked back at himself. He asked, "Is this emotion truly who I am? Or is it just something passing through me?" And when the answer became clear, that emotion is not identity, the heaviness dissolved. He returned to clarity. He returned to purpose. He returned to himself. 5. The moment he faced his final destiny, Marcus Aurelius knew death was approaching. His illness had been growing for years. But what is remarkable is not the death itself, but how he welcomed it. No fear, no clinging, no desperation, only observation, only acceptance. In his final writings, he said, "When you depart, the universe continues. Why then should you fear?" The man who had stood above life was now ready to step beyond it. 6. The lesson his life leaves behind. Marcus Aurelius was not a man without fear, not a man without pain, not a man without doubt. But he possessed distance, a higher vantage point, a mind trained to observe, not be consumed. He could not control the world, but he could control his mind. And through that, he controlled his fate. This is the true power of the technique he left behind for us. Marcus Aurelius believed that life was not happening to him, but happening for him. Every difficulty, every insult, every loss, every obstacle. To Marcus, these were not interruptions in his life. They were the training ground for his soul. He wrote, "The world is constantly testing you, not to break you, but to teach you who you are." And because of that mindset, Marcus developed an extraordinary ability. He could take any hardship and turn it into a lesson for the mind. 1. Obstacles as opportunities. Marcus saw obstacles differently than most people. Where others saw frustration, Marcus saw a challenge. Where others saw a barrier, Marcus saw an opening. Where others saw disaster, Marcus saw the chance to strengthen virtues. He wrote one of his most famous lines: "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." To him, obstacles were not walls. They were doorways. They revealed the exact quality he needed to strengthen: patience, courage, discipline, humility, clarity, Resilience. The world wasn't unfair to him. The world was preparing him. 2. People as teachers. Marcus lived surrounded by difficult people. Ambitious generals, jealous senators, flatterers, betrayers, liars. But instead of resenting them, he treated them as instructors in his spiritual training. Someone rude? A lesson in patience. Someone dishonest? A lesson in clarity and caution. Someone arrogant? A reminder to stay humble. Someone angry? A lesson in remaining calm. He wrote, "The behavior of others is not your burden. It is your lesson." To Marcus, every human interaction was a mirror reflecting something about himself. Not something to fight, but something to learn. 3. Pain as a messenger. Marcus suffered from chronic illness, likely severe joint pain and stomach issues. But he did not see his body as an enemy. He used pain as a messenger. He would ask, "What is this discomfort trying to teach me? Patience? Acceptance? The nature of the body? Or simply the reminder that life is fragile?" By turning inward, he discovered a truth few people accept. Pain loses its power when we stop fearing it. The fear of pain is often more painful than the pain itself. 4. Responsibility as training for the spirit. Marcus carried the weight of an empire. Armies, politics, economy, famine, plague. But instead of collapsing under the burden, he saw responsibility as sharpening his mind the way a whetstone sharpens steel. Leadership forced him to stay calm. Pressure forced him to stay clear. Uncertainty forced him to stay grounded. He wrote, "If the challenge is great, then so is the opportunity for growth." To him, the heavier the responsibility, the stronger the character that could emerge from it. 5. How we apply this today. We are not emperors. We are not commanding armies. But we face battles every day. Stress, deadlines, conflict, insecurity, fear of the future. The question is not whether life is hard. The question is, how can this moment train me? When you feel overwhelmed, you can ask, is this teaching me to be patient? Is this teaching me to let go? Is this teaching me to speak with courage? Is this teaching me to stay calm in chaos? Is this teaching me to understand myself? When you look at every challenge as a form of training, something powerful happens. You stop fighting life. You start learning from it. And suddenly, the chaos that once threatened to break you becomes the very thing that builds you. 6. Marcus' final reminder. In one of his most reflective moments, Marcus wrote, "Life is a training ground for the soul. Every moment is a chance to practice virtue." To him, virtue wasn't something to read about in books. It was something to live through difficulty. And that is the legacy he left us. Every hardship can be transformed into a step toward becoming your strongest self. For Marcus Aurelius, calmness was not a gift. It was a discipline, something he practiced every single day, often in the quiet moments no one else saw. Behind the armor of an emperor was a man who relied on small, inner rituals to keep his mind from unraveling. These practices were simple, but powerful enough to hold him steady, while the world around him fell into chaos. 1. The breath as an anchor. Marcus understood that chaos does not begin externally. It begins with a racing mind and a shallow breath. So whenever he felt tension rising, the pressure of the Senate, the fear of tomorrow, the fatigue of long campaigns, he returned to the oldest tool humans possess: his breath. He wrote, "The mind must be given time to recover." A moment of breathing restores clarity. Marcus used a simple pattern. A slow inhale. A gentle pause. A longer exhale. Not to calm the world around him, but to calm the world within him. When the breath slowed, his thoughts followed. When the breath deepened, his awareness widened. And in that widening, he created space for wisdom. 2. The practice of present moment awareness. Marcus refused to live inside the past or the future. He knew those were realms filled with illusions. Regret behind us. Fear ahead of us. But the present moment? That was real. So he trained himself to return to this breath. This step. This task. This conversation. He wrote, "Remember, the present moment is enough." When the burden of ruling an empire felt overwhelming, he stopped asking, "How will I handle everything?" Instead, he asked, "What is the right action in front of me right now?" And he acted. Not in panic, but with presence. 3. The power of simple self-reminders. Marcus Aurelius used his journal, Meditations, as a way to speak to himself. Not to the world. Not to history. To himself. Every entry was a reminder of the person he wanted to be. He wrote lines such as, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't be. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." These were not philosophical statements. They were daily instructions, a compass for his inner life. Each morning, he reminded himself of virtue. Each night, he reminded himself of humility. And with every challenge, he reminded himself of perspective. His journal was more than writing. It was mental armor. 4. Returning to the view from above. Even after mastering the view from above, Marcus practiced it constantly. When emotions grew too loud, he would pause and imagine rising upward, above the argument, above the politics, above the fear, above the noise of human life, higher and higher, until the world below shrank into a quiet moving pattern. From that vantage point, nothing seemed as catastrophic as it did on the ground. He asked himself, "From above, what does this problem look like?" Almost always, the answer was the same. Small, temporary, human. And when the problem grew small, his mind grew large. 5. Gratitude in the midst of hardship. People often assume Stoicism is emotionless. But Marcus practiced gratitude as deeply as any spiritual teacher. He wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to breathe, to think, to love, to be alive." This gratitude was not for comfort. It was for existence itself. It grounded him. It humbled him. It reminded him that even in difficulty, life is still a gift. Gratitude softened the sharp edges of hardship and transformed suffering into meaning. 6. Ending each day with reflection. Every night, Marcus would review the day. Not to judge himself, not to punish himself, but to learn. He asked, "Did I act with virtue? Did I let anger control me? Did I practice patience? Did I speak honestly? Did I waste energy on things beyond my control?" He treated each day as a lesson, and each mistake as a teacher. Reflection was his reset button, allowing him to start tomorrow a little wiser, a little calmer, a little more aligned with the person he aimed to become. The quiet truth behind his calm. Marcus Aurelius did not become calm by accident. He crafted that calm, breath by breath. moment by moment, day by day. He didn't wait for a peaceful life. He created peace within himself. And that is the lesson his inner practices leave us. Calm is not found. Calm is built, not in grand rituals, but in small, steady moments of awareness, breathing, acceptance, and choosing the wiser response. Even the wisest minds have their breaking points. And Marcus Aurelius, emperor, philosopher, Stoic, was no exception. There were days when he felt crushed under the weight of the empire. Days when illness racked his body. Days when grief hollowed out his heart. Days when the world felt too heavy even for him. And in those darkest moments, when his strength faltered, and hope seemed thin, Marcus turned inward, not to escape, but to rebuild himself. 1. When exhaustion took over. Some mornings, Marcus wrote that he could barely rise from his bed. His body ached. His joints burned with pain. The constant travel, the cold camps, the endless decisions, all of it left him drained. But instead of forcing himself forward, with anger or pride, he spoke to himself gently. You were not made for luxury. You were made to do your duty as a human being. This was not self-punishment. It was reorientation. He reminded himself, I am not here to feel good. I am here to live well. And slowly, strength returned. Not from the body, but from purpose. 2. When doubt whispered in his ear. Despite being emperor, Marcus questioned himself constantly. What if he made the wrong decision? What if he failed the empire? What if he was not the leader Rome needed? In these moments, he wrote, if your choices are guided by reason and virtue, do not fear the outcome. To him, doubt was not an enemy. It was a reminder to return to clarity. He didn't ask, what if I fail? He asked, what is the right thing to do? And once he knew the answer, he followed it. Quietly, steadily, completely. The storm inside him weakened. 3. When grief broke him open. Marcus knew grief intimately. He buried several of his children. He buried friends he had trusted for decades. He lost the woman he loved more than anyone. Grief did not knock on his door politely. It tore through him like a storm. But even in sorrow, he practiced the Stoic art of acceptance. He wrote, what has happened is not misfortune. To endure it well, that is good fortune. He allowed himself to feel the pain. He did not fight it. He did not pretend it wasn't there. But he refused to let it turn him bitter. To him, grief was not a punishment. It was proof that he had loved deeply. And that love, even in loss, was a blessing. 4. When hope began to fade. There were times when the empire seemed on the brink. Rebellions rising, enemies pressing, plagues spreading, people losing faith. In those bleakest hours, Marcus asked himself the simplest question. What small good can I do today? Not tomorrow. Not for the whole empire. Just today. He understood that great hope is not restored through grand gestures, but through small acts done with conviction. A just decision, a kind word, a moment of clarity, a breath of patience. These tiny choices stitched together the fabric of hope. 5. The turning point, reclaiming the inner citadel. When the outside world became unbearable, Marcus retreated into what he called the inner citadel. This was not escape. It was a return to the core of who he was. Inside that inner space, he reminded himself, the world cannot disturb me. Only my judgment can. I choose my response. I am responsible for my own soul. The inner citadel was unshakable, unreachable by chaos, untouched by fear, and every time he returned to it, Marcus found himself again. 6. The universal lesson in his darkest moments. The brilliance of Marcus Aurelius is not that he never struggled. It's that he struggled honestly and skillfully. He did not hide his pain. He studied it. He learned from it. He let it refine him. His darkest moments became the raw material from which his wisdom was forged. And the lesson he leaves us is simple. You do not need a perfect life to cultivate a strong mind. You need only the courage to look within and choose the wiser path. Moment by moment. In struggle, he grew. In pain, he deepened. In darkness, he found light. And so can we. Centuries have passed since Marcus Aurelius walked the earth. Empires have risen and fallen. Cities have crumbled into dust. Generations have come and gone. And yet, his words remain, not as relics of a distant past, but as a map for anyone living through chaos today. Marcus never intended for his writings to become a book. They were private notes, reflections he wrote for himself, not for an audience. But perhaps that is why they speak so clearly to us now. There is no rhetoric, no performance, only a man trying to understand how to live with wisdom and integrity in a world that rarely made sense. And that struggle, that very human struggle, has not changed. 1. His lessons fit the modern world perfectly. Our challenges look different today. There are no Roman legions, no barbarian tribes, no political senate plotting in marble halls. But we face deadlines, social pressure, anxiety, loneliness, uncertainty, digital noise, self-doubt, the constant comparison to others. The battlefield has changed, but the mind fighting on it has not. And so Marcus' teachings fit perfectly into our modern lives. He teaches us to pause, to breathe, to rise above our impulses, to focus on what we can control, to act with virtue even when it feels impossible, to stay steady in a world that is spinning. His world was chaotic. Ours is chaotic. But the principles that saved him can save us too. 2. A guide for when life feels too heavy. Marcus left behind a set of instructions for the exact moments when life feels overwhelming. When your mind is cluttered, come back to your breath. When people frustrate you, see them as teachers, not enemies. When the future scares you, return to the present moment. When emotions rise like storms, step outside yourself and observe. When life feels unfair, remember that obstacles form the path. When you feel lost, seek the inner citadel, the part of you no chaos can touch. He didn't just philosophize. He gave us tools. And those tools remain sharp even today. 3. A reminder that wisdom is built, not given. Marcus' life shows us something vital. Strength of mind is not natural. It is trained. Trained in adversity. Trained in daily reflection. Trained in the small choices we make every day. Trained in how we speak to ourselves. Trained in how we respond to difficulty. Marcus did not become wise by sitting in comfort. He became wise by navigating storms. With discipline, courage, and honesty, he leaves us a model not of perfection, but of practice. And that practice is available to every one of us. 4. His philosophy was never about escaping life. Stoicism is often misunderstood. as coldness, distance, or emotionlessness. But Marcus Aurelius did not avoid life. He walked straight into it. Into battle. Into loss. Into betrayal. Into pain. Into responsibility. Into uncertainty. And he still chose peace. Not because life was smooth, but because he refused to let chaos govern the space within his mind. This is the heart of his message. You do not control the world, but you control how you meet it. That is where freedom begins. 5. Why his words still echo today. We read Marcus not because he was emperor, but because he was human. As human as any of us. He struggled. He questioned. He suffered. He doubted. He lost. He fell. He rose again. And through it all, he wrote reminders to himself. That became reminders for all of us. His voice echoes across time, because it speaks to a truth that has never changed. The world is chaotic, but the mind can remain still. This stillness, this inner calm, is the legacy Marcus Aurelius leaves behind. Not a kingdom, not a monument, not an empire, but a map for every human being, learning to navigate their own storms. As we reach the end of this journey, stand still for a moment. Breathe. Let everything settle. Because what Marcus Aurelius left us is not just a philosophy, but a way of moving through the world. A way of meeting chaos with calm. A way of meeting suffering with acceptance. A way of meeting uncertainty with strength. A way of meeting ourselves with honesty and compassion. He showed us that peace is not found in the quiet of the world, but in the quiet we create within our own minds. And now, that practice is yours to carry. When life becomes heavy, remember this. You have the power to step outside your racing thoughts, to rise above the noise, to breathe deeply, to return to the present moment, to choose the wiser response, to walk through hardship as if it were training, not punishment. You have your own inner citadel, a fortress built not from stone, but from awareness, clarity, and calm. No storm can break it unless you open the gates. A final whisper from Marcus Aurelius. Before his writings close, Marcus leaves us with one simple reminder. A truth soft enough to comfort, yet strong enough to carry for a lifetime. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, not on what others do, not on what the world gives or takes, not on fortune, fate, or circumstance, but on the state of your own mind. And that mind is yours to shape. So as you go back into your life, carry his perspective, carry his steadiness, carry his breath, carry his courage, carry his clarity, carry his wisdom into every moment that tries to shake you. And remember, chaos will visit you, but it does not have to live within you. You can stand above it, just as Marcus did. Thank you for walking this path today. May you leave with a quieter mind, a stronger spirit, and the reminder that the calm you seek has always been within you.